Hello and welcome to Eye on Africa, France 24's program focused on the continent. I'm Charlie James, and these are the headlines. A dramatic deportation from Kenya. After trying to return from Canada, opposition politician Miguna Miguna says he was drugged and removed from the country while unconscious. A 57-stop farewell tour for Botswana's president, full of celebrations and gifts. Khama will step down as leader this weekend, a full 18 months before the end of his term. And today marks 30 years since anti-apartheid activist Dulcie September was gunned down on a Paris street. Her murder remains unsolved. France 24 looks at the search for answers. We begin in Kenya, where the highly anticipated return of an opposition leader was cut short after a tense standoff at the Nairobi airport. Miguna Miguna says on Wednesday evening he was beaten, drugged, and then forcibly deported from the country. He was flown to Dubai after being detained in an airport bathroom for more than 24 hours. A court held top officials in contempt for not releasing him, but Kenyan officials argue that Miguna, who holds dual Canadian nationality, is not a Kenyan citizen. Miguna says their motives are political and has appealed for help on his social media accounts. Earlier tonight, I spoke to Reuben Khama in Nairobi about why the government wants to keep Miguna out of the country so badly.
You will recall that Miguna's first expulsion came after he was arrested for taking part in a mock inauguration of opposition leader Raila Odinga, who challenged the outcome of last year's presidential elections. Kenyan authorities deported him in February, saying that he had rescinded his citizenship, but a court later ruled that he should be allowed to come back. He arrived back in Nairobi Monday, but late Wednesday, as you have clearly put it, Kenyan authorities deported the opposition politicians on an Emirates flight, according to his lawyers. That is 2 days after police also detained him on his return to the country. The deportation goes against at least 2 court orders for police to release him so that he can present himself in court. But Interior Ministry officials here have denied that Miguna was being held illegally, arguing that he failed to follow the arrival procedures when he landed in Kenya earlier this week. And actually, a similar position also has been taken by the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, which is a state-funded body responsible for monitoring alleged human rights violations.
A Somali employee of the International Committee of the Red Cross is dead after an explosion targeted his car in the capital of Mogadishu. The father of 2 young daughters, Abdul Hafid Yusuf Ibrahim, had been working for the ICRC for 5 months. Somalia's Shabab Islamists have claimed Wednesday's bombing. The al-Qaeda-linked group wants to overthrow the internationally backed government in Mogadishu and launches regular attacks in the country. The International Committee of the Red Cross said in a statement the organization is devastated by the loss of one of its staff. State media in Egypt reports that President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has been re-elected to a second 4-year term, taking more than 90% of the vote. Running essentially unopposed, Sisi was all but guaranteed victory. The only real variable in the election was turnout, which the government tried to boost with a mix of rewards and bullying. Among 60 million eligible voters, initial estimates put the turnout at around 41%, a decrease from the rate in 2014. Opposition figures had called for a boycott after several potential candidates withdrew or were arrested. Now, farewell tours are usually reserved for rock bands, but in Botswana, the president has been traveling the country ahead of stepping down from office. Nicolas Germain has more on the unorthodox leader's bittersweet goodbye.
There was a festive atmosphere when Botswana's president Khama ended his farewell tour in his ancestral village. The leader of the world's second biggest diamond producer has served the constitutional maximum of 10 years in office.
I was a soldier. I didn't have any interest in joining politics. I had future plans away from politics. The former president approached me and convinced me to join politics. Now Botswana's convincing me that I should become a farmer with all the animals that have been gifted to me.
His supporters praised his good governance and the development of the country thanks to diamond and beef exports and tourism.
He's so compassionate. He helps each and everyone, whether you are poor or you are rich or you are sick, disabled. He's just there for you.
Khama's critics say he's autocratic, and they point out that unemployment has risen these last 10 years. He's known for his straight talking. Khama famously called on Zimbabwe's Robert Mugabe to step down well before he was ousted. And he said Congo's Joseph Kabila should have resigned when his mandate expired in 2016.
Lagos, Nigeria is on lockdown Thursday for a visit from the country's president. Muhammadu Buhari rarely travels outside of the capital of Abuja, but made his first official trip to Lagos as campaigning for next year's presidential election heats up. Buhari is from Nigeria's mostly Muslim north, and if he runs for president again, he'll need the support of the prosperous southwest, and by extension, its politicians. That includes influential Lagos leader Bola Tinubu, who has been politically sidelined since the 2015 election. Turning now to South Africa, where a controversial movie depicting a gay love story has become the most awarded film in the country's history. But traditional leaders are trying to have it banned from theaters. Ineba, meaning the wound in Xhosa language, is set during a rite of passage ceremony for young men from the Xhosa ethnic group. Following protests, the movie was given the same classification as pornography, but producers are in court trying to get the X rating permanently overturned. Those opposed to the film say it distorts the ritual and portrays the culture as intolerant. But one of the film's stars says it's important to discuss acceptance in a traditional context.
We need to be valued by our communities, and we need to be valued for who we are. Right? And we need to take our stand, and we need to stop fighting so much to get accepted or be where we're meant to be, right? Because we belong to these communities. And if we aren't accepted by them, who's going to accept us? To what do we belong to? To whom do we belong to?
And finally, today marks 30 years since South African anti-apartheid activist Dulcie September was assassinated here in Paris. Her killers have never been found, but there are still people attempting to unravel the mystery. Caroline Dumais and Stefan Karstens bring us the story from South Africa.
The University of Fort Hare, where Nelson Mandela studied, is today where the historical records of the ANC are stored. This includes the notes of the late Dulcie September, who represented the ANC in France from 1983 to 1988.
Now let's have a look here.
This collection reveals that she was investigating clandestine arms deals between Paris and Pretoria. Dulcie, for instance, showed that the French were smuggling military equipment to South Africa via the port of Bordeaux.
Dulcie September managed to identify that. Not just to identify that, but also to tell people of the world that South Africa and France, this is what they are doing.
After being imprisoned in South Africa, Dulcie found exile in Paris, believing that she was safe to express herself in a land of human rights, only to be assassinated in 1988. Her portrait still hangs in Betty's lounge. As activist friends, they shared the same prison cell. For Betty, Dulcie was incorruptible.
If what she saw was red, there was no way they were going to convince her that it was pink.
Dulcie had understood that the apartheid war machine was being fueled from Paris with the tacit approval of French authorities.
From here, they were able to move to countries like Luxembourg and Belgium, where there were banks that were used to launder the funds to buy weapons across the globe.
But South Africans refused to sweep the murder under the carpet. Journalists like Evelyn still work on it after 30 years. She points out in her book that the French Secret Service could be implicated in the murder of Dulcie.
I noticed that every time there is something written, this is not picked up in France, not by public opinion, not by media, and not by authorities. So I just don't understand it, that silence.
Dulcie's family also never understood. Michael, her nephew, is not giving up.
I would like to know the truth, yes. And if that takes the rest of my life, then so be it.
Michael is in France this week. He will try to reopen the investigation.
That's all for this edition, but do stay with us here on France 24. There's more news coming up next.
France 24 es rigurosidad, precisión y responsabilidad. Somos una familia comprometida con el periodismo y la verdad.
C'est une des seules chaînes d'infos où on nous laisse jouer en plateau avec des Legos, avec des robots, avec tout un tas d'objets.
We take a return ticket to revisit some of the key people and places of the last 50 years of world television news.
على فرانس 24 يمكننا أن نحاور أصحاب القرار من العالم في كل الميادين ولدينا المساحة لكشف ثنايا مسيرتهم.
Aquí en France 24 tenemos a varias personas de distintos países, algo que es un reflejo de cómo es Latinoamérica, con culturas muy distintas. Y allí es muy bonito encontrar que en el deporte todos tenemos algo en común.
Les femmes, elles sont souvent victimes de l'actualité internationale, mais ce sont aussi des actrices majeures de la géopolitique. Et d'ailleurs, on en parle dans France 24.